Hello everybody and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be taking you through the scheduler. So you've probably heard of let's say the synonyms. So we have the scheduler, we have runnables, we have tasks. That's all joined into one topic. I'm going to be taking you through that today. So basically what we're learning about today is essentially how to have tasks which can be ran on the main thread or on a different thread, so async, and then how to run a task at a delay. So say I want to do something in 10 seconds time or in 5 ticks time, and then also a timer. So say I want something to run every 5 seconds. And so to achieve this, what we do is we use the BukkitScheduler, and we do bucket.getScheduler. And from the BukkitScheduler, we can then access a load of functions. You can see we have run task, we have run task asynchronously, we have, let me search it, run task later, and that's the one that sets it at a delay. We have run task later asynchronously, and then finally we have run task timer, and then we have run task timer asynchronously. So that's the 6 functions that are relevant to us today. Now, this is a skill that even if you don't want to learn it now, you will absolutely have to know it, because you are always going to need to have delayed or repeating tasks in some form. Let's think about the most basic examples. So in a mini game, when you have the countdown at the start, you have a 30-second countdown. That's just a repeating task. What that does is it repeats every second, and then it counts itself, and after 30 seconds, then it stops itself. Now let's say once that minigame started, let's say it's a game where you have to wait 5 minutes and then something happens. Let's say the walls fall down or something. That would just be a delayed task. That would be saying in 5 minutes time, do this. So basically think of this as delayed tasks and repeating tasks. But before we even get into those, I do want to show you something which is quite important, and that is just the regular run task function. So if we do run task, this function is designed to run something on the main thread. Now this would mostly be relevant when somehow you have found yourself off the main thread. Because remember that Bukkit and the Spigot API doesn't like you doing things which aren't on the main thread. And in some instances, they even have an async catcher, which means that if you found yourself in a position where you're running something that isn't on the main thread and you try to run something in the API, then it will catch it, throw it an error, and not let you do it because it's too dangerous to do it. So if you find yourself in this position, say for example, you're using the async chat event, that is how you could get in a position where you've got something async. So if you ever need to run something in the Bukkit or Spigot API, and you're not on the main thread, then all you do is simply run task, and then the first parameter is an instance of the main class. Now I'm in the main class, so I can just write this, but if you were in a different class from the main class, then you would need an instance of it, which you could either pass through to that class, or you could do a little companion object setup, or anything like that. So that's the first parameter, is the main class. The second parameter is going to be a runnable. So to do that, we write the word runnable with a capital R, we're referencing the Java class name, and then we open it up with a body. And then in here, this is the code that's going to run. Okay, so now let's talk about the exact same function, except we're going to copy and paste it. Now this one is going to be run task asynchronously. So if you ever need to run something that isn't on the main thread, then you put your code inside of here and it will do just that. Now there is some sort of illusion that running something asynchronously means that somehow it's not going to take up your server resources and it's just going to pull the computing power out of nowhere. Well, obviously it's not true. It has to use your server resources. The only difference essentially is it's not on the main thread, which means that the server has allocated a tiny bit more space for you, which isn't on the main thread. So that means if the main thread gets caught up, it gets blocked somehow, say there's just too much lag, it can't keep up, then in most cases your thread should be fine. And you can still run what little you need to on that thread. So if you do need to run anything asynchronously, this is how you do it. You put your code inside of here. But as I said, be careful because Spigot and Bukkit don't like you running API functions asynchronously. That's that one. Now let's get to the real fun stuff. And this is where we'll actually do some code which we're going to have run inside of our server. All right, so let's just close this up. I'll just leave it like this. I do want to leave this code here just so you're aware that it exists, and also because it'll be in the source code attached to this video. I can't really do anything in it because there's not really an easy way to prove that something is or isn't on the main thread. So just be aware that that is how you do it. But now let's get to the real fun stuff, which is delaying a task and having a timer, so a repeating task. And then we'll put in some code so we can actually see this happening. So in order to run a task later, so to delay a task, we're going to run Bukkit BukkitScheduler run task later. Now, of course, you're going to need that instance of the main class again. So we'll write this. And then for the second parameter, just as above, we're going to have a runnable. And then we have a third parameter. So make sure you press comma in the right place here. It's going to be in between the curly brace and the parentheses. We put a comma. And then for the third parameter, we're going to put the delay itself. So the delay is measured in ticks. Remember, in Minecraft, there's 20 ticks per second. So if you want to put 20 here, that means that the code inside of this block here will not run until after 1 second, after 20 ticks. Now, let's say that I need some time to log in the server because this is going to fire in the on enable. So let's just say I need a few seconds. So I'll set mine to, let's say 10 seconds. So let's just do some quick maths. So there's 20 ticks per second. So 20 times 10 is 200. Or if you don't want to do the maths, you can very simply write here the amount of seconds times 20. Or you can just do the maths in advance like I'm going to do. So I'll do 200. So in 200 ticks time or 10 seconds, run the code inside of this block here. So let's just run some code. So why don't I say bucket.broadcast and we'll do component.text and we'll say server has been up for 10 seconds. Okay. There we go. So the moment my server starts, I'll have to be on the ball ready to join. And then after 10 seconds, we should see this message. Now, if you want to run this asynchronously, it's very simple. You just change the function name from run task later to run task later asynchronously, just like that. Okay, so there we go, guys. That is run task later. So this is how you delay something from happening. Okay, so the final one that we're going to cover is probably the most common one, and you'll use this so often when you get into kind of deep plugin development, is a repeating task. So to do this, we do bucket, then we get the scheduler once more, and we'll do run task timer. And you can see there's loads of different ways to do this. I'll show you the most common one. So what we do is we give it our instance of the main class, of course, first. And then secondly, we create a runnable. Okay, brilliant. And then the third and fourth parameter. So the third parameter, as you can see here, is named the delay. So I'll just tell you in advance, the fourth parameter is the period. So how often does this run? Which means the third parameter is how long until it first runs. So how long until we kick this task in a gear? How long until we start this task for the first time? So let's say that I want to start at 15 seconds after the server starts. Well, I know that this is going to run after 10 seconds, the delayed task, so I'll do 300 ticks, which will represent 15 seconds. So after 15 seconds, this task is going to run for the first time. And then so how often do I want it to run? Well, I think every second makes sense, well, just as a little test. So we'll do every second, so we'll do 20. So now this is going to run after 15 seconds or 300 ticks, and it's going to run every second from then or every 20 ticks. So what we'll do is, why don't we just send a message saying, we'll do bucket. Okay, what's going on here? The indentation can mess up occasionally. So I'll just do bucket.broadcast. We'll do components.text and we'll say, it's been 15 seconds. And this goes every 1 second. Okay, so this should spam every 1 second, basically. Okay, good stuff. So that's going to be pretty cool. Now, the last thing I want to show you is how to create a task which cancels itself. So we need a repeating task here, but the problem is with a countdown, for example, after 30 seconds, it'll cancel. We can't keep counting down into the -1, -2, etc. The problem is with a regular runnable, it's not very easy to cancel from within itself. And so what we can use instead of a runnable is a bucket runnable. So in order to do this, we'll do another one. We'll just do a countdown. Okay, so how to do a countdown. So that's actually a task timer, but we're going to use the bucket runnable instead. Now we have to use that slightly differently. And I'm showing you this, by the way, because a countdown is such a valuable skill. So you should really get to know it if you can. So what we're going to do is a little bit strange, but just hang tight. So we're going to write the word object, and then we're going to write a colon, and then bucket runnable. And then we'll open the parentheses, and then we'll open the body. Okay, now we're going to get an error, and that's because we need to implement the run function. So implement members, okay, and there we go. Okay, so you probably haven't come across this whole object situation before. Now what we're essentially doing here is by object, we're creating what's called an anonymous inner class. So essentially just imagine it as a class, which is kind of a throwaway class. We're just creating it temporarily so that we can extend Bucket Runnable, which is why inside of here, we're having to override the function provided by Bucket Runnable. So Bucket Runnable is an abstract class. And so, of course, we need to access it. And all Object is doing is essentially just creating an anonymous class for us in order to run and override the Bucket Runnable functions. So what we're doing here for the timer, well, firstly, we have to have a value that we can iterate up or down to, in which case I'm going to do a 10-second countdown. So I'll do var, and then I'll do countdown equals 10. Okay, so in order to make the countdown, it's not too complicated. First things first, let's tell the player what the value is. So we'll do bucket.broadcast component.text, and we'll say countdown value, and then we'll reference the countdown. Okay, now we're keeping the countdown value within this inner class that we've created so that we don't need to, for example, keep the onEnable loaded. Or what I mean is the garbage collector can come eat all this up. We're just now operating within the context of our Bucket Runnable. So we're keeping this inside of the class, and then we'll do countdown value, but then we'll also do countdown minus minus. So minus minus, of course, just means equal to -1 of the value. So it's going to go countdown is 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But of course, we need to stop it when it gets to a certain point. So we'll do above the broadcast, if countdown equals 0, then we will return, and that'll stop the code execution down here, but that won't cancel the task, of course, because this is only one iteration of the task. So to cancel the task, we're going to write the word cancel. Now we're going to call that function, and then if you wanted to send a nice little broadcast message and say bucket.broadcast, and we'll say component.text, countdown has ended, start game or something. So here's where you'd start the game, or whatever you're doing, whatever the countdown's relevant for. And that is how you would do a timer. Okay, so the last thing we need to do to make this timer actually work is, well, we haven't set it so how often it goes or anything like that. So we need to do on this curly brace type dot, and then you'll see we have the exact same functions that we had up here. So we have run task timer, you have run task later, you have run task asynchronously. So I'm going to run task timer. So reference the main class, which is this. Second parameter is long, and period is the third. Now notice that we don't need to put in the runnable value because we're running it on the runnable, so it knows what it is. So the delay, because I want all of this to happen after, let's do a bit of quick maths. So this is happening after 15 seconds. Let's just make this one start after 20 seconds. By the way, this is going to be absolute chaos in the chat. This is going to be 400, so it starts after 20 seconds. And then the final parameter is going to be how often it goes. Now, of course, a countdown only makes sense if it counts down every second. So we will do 20 to refer to 1 second. Okay, guys, so it's a little bit chunky, but what I've shown you in this example is firstly how to create a task on the main thread, how to run some code asynchronously, so that's on a different thread, how to run a task later, how to run a task timer, so that's what we call a repeating task, so that repeats at a certain interval that you set after a certain delay. And then I've shown you how to do a task timer, so a repeating task, but actually how to use it as a countdown, which can self-cancel. So these are the 4 main ones, but I thought I'll just throw this countdown in as a bonus, and it'll be a really good place to come back if you ever need a countdown for any reason. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this up, and you should too, but be prepared because it's going to be very busy in chat once we get there. So I'll go to Gradle, run server, and I'll see you guys in a second. Alright guys, my server is just starting now, and I'm being very careful to get in nice and quick. Okay, so the first thing is that we had a task to run after 10 seconds, and that was simply going to say server's been up for 10 seconds. So let's hang tight for that. And there we go. That was the delayed task. Then in 5 seconds time, we're going to start the timer, which goes every 1 second. As you can see, this is going every 1 second. That's perfect. The countdown started. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there you go. So the countdown has ended. So it would start the game or something there if you were in an actual environment. And you can see this one's still going on. The countdown stopped. Now, in hindsight, this is a bit messy and it's a big mess in chat. But the point is that this is all working as we intended. So that, guys, was how you create in-game a delayed task, a repeating task, and as a little bonus, a working countdown, which cancels itself. So if you have any questions on how this works, please don't hesitate to join our Discord and we'll come help you out. I realize it can be a little bit complex at times, but I think what I have on my screen here is a nice overview of it. So don't forget the source code is always attached alongside the video if you need to copy it or anything like that. But anyhow, we'll call it a day. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.